Today I want to talk about the idea that 2024 could indeed be the perfect year for Nintendo to revisit many of their long forgotten franchises, as if you look around and look at their 2024 games lineup, up to this point in time, 80% of their new first-party Nintendo Switch releases are either a port or a remaster of a classic game. We are getting Princess Peach Showtime released in March of this year, and that qualifies as the new game, but outside of that, Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a Game Boy Advance remake. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is of course a port or remaster of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon from the 3DS, and Another Code Recollection actually standing out as a title that I think helps fuel this theory that we may indeed see Nintendo go into some of their more niche franchises from a sales perspective, because I don't know about you, but I never played the Another Code games. I know they have a cult following and a fan base, but it's not something that's one of the mainstream Nintendo franchises, and with that being on the table in 2024, I think it does open up the conversation that some of the big missing franchises that we haven't seen new installments for years and years now could be around the corner at something like a upcoming February Nintendo Direct, especially if we are to believe that this is indeed the year that Nintendo will transition to new hardware in 2024, and we know that they like to pad their release schedule with many simple projects, ports and remasters being that perfect example, because that way they can have simple B dev teams essentially take on those projects and with minimal work resell a game, still make profit as they need to month in and month out, but then they have their heavy hitter AAA developers working on what is new for next generation hardware. And we're going to dive through my personal list of franchises that I am more than ready to see make a return this year, right after you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And with that, number one on my list is none other than Star Fox. Now, we did actually see an entry in the Star Fox franchise on the Wii U, but so far, 7 years into the Nintendo Switch lifecycle, we have not seen Star Fox return in any way, shape, or form outside of Nintendo Switch Online, obviously, which lets you play Star Fox 64, one of my favorite games of all time. But Star Fox Zero was a game that really went after that unique gameplay style with the Wii U gamepad and control scheme, and I don't think it went over that great with fans. Not to mention, you can't really say that anything on the Wii U really got a fair shot, because it was obviously the smallest install base we've ever seen Nintendo end up with in terms of a home console release, and they were struggling then. It's not quite a fair comparison to say that Star Fox can't sell in the modern day, because that was the last entry we got and it was on a failing system, and we haven't seen Star Fox return in a big way on a modern, very successful system, and I'm ready to see that happen. Now, could they go the route of something simple and play it safe, like a Star Fox 64 remaster from the ground up? We've already seen that game remastered for the 3DS, and I don't think that that would actually be the best pick. Might we see something like Star Fox Assault or Star Fox Adventures from the GameCube era? I do think that those are on the table for a port or remaster to kind of just gauge the interest for fans. The thing about Star Fox Adventures, though, is it was essentially Rare's version of a Legend of Zelda game, with Star Fox being the main protagonist, and I don't know that they would really revisit that exact gameplay formula for Star Fox, but I'm not opposed to it. I would actually love to see it, and I would love to see a new studio put their own spin on something like a sequel to Star Fox Adventures, and maybe they start out with porting the old GameCube classic to the Switch, but you do have to get Rare involved. Now, Microsoft and Nintendo have a very good working relationship, better than ever, and they could come to terms on re-releasing a port of that game, but I don't necessarily expect that one to be the one on the table. The same thing with Star Fox Assault. We could see that ported over and brought back with an HD upres, but I'm not entirely sold on the idea that it will happen. Will we go Star Fox from the SNES, or even Star Fox 2 that we finally saw released on the SNES Mini? I'm definitely not expecting those either, and I really don't know that Star Fox will get a port or remaster, but it's definitely a franchise I'm ready to see come back in some capacity. Whether or not it is a port or remaster of a classic iteration in the franchise, or Nintendo does really go all out and we just get a surprise brand new Star Fox game, I think you could at least gauge the fan interest, though, by picking a simple older title. So let me know in the comments down below which classic Star Fox game you hope we see ported or remastered as part of Nintendo Switch's 2024 lineup, and if you think it's actually likely to happen at all. I'm less convinced it will happen, but I sure would love to see it. Next up on my list is F-Zero, and you might might say, well, we just got F-Zero 99, and that's technically a new game on the Nintendo Switch. And to that, I would say you're right, but we also know that this is one of those more or less live service multiplayer games. It's gotten a lot of updates since it was released, but it's really designed to be an extra benefit of being a Nintendo Switch Online member. It's also temporary, just like we've seen the other 99 games go away. I'm sure we will see F-Zero 99 go away, sadly, one day as well, and it really does use that base of the SNES F-Zero experience, and I am just hopeful that this was Nintendo doing that step one of testing the waters to see if there is some fan interest for F-Zero in the modern day, and I haven't seen what the play numbers look like. I have seen a lot of talk around F-Zero 99 online, but I am hopeful that they give either another classic title the port or remaster treatment in 2024, such as F-Zero GX being the perfect candidate due to the visual quality of that game on the GameCube, which was the last system from Nintendo that really competed on power against the other guys in that particular console generation. Just give that thing the Metroid Prime remastered treatment where you just up-res everything, you create new lighting and textures, and you really give it a fair shot, but keep it to the core gameplay mechanics. It is a ridiculously hard racer. You absolutely have to have insane reflexes and response time in order to win out some of the races on the higher difficulties, but I'm ready to see a game like that come back, and if that does indeed end up being successful on the platform, that would hopefully lead you to believe that next gen we could maybe see Nintendo finally bring back F-Zero in a big way with a brand new from the ground up game release. Now, next up, we have a franchise that might actually actively be receiving a port or remaster, and it could be in the pipeline for 2024. It is none other than Kid Icarus, and specifically Kid Icarus Uprising, because you may or may have not have seen a video we talked about here where there are some job listings over at Bandai Namco, one of which name a 3D action game, and based off the job description, it is very much hinting towards it being a remaster of an existing Nintendo project. And we also had that little nod from Mr. Sakurai, who said he sure hopes that somebody over at Nintendo would port or remaster Kid Icarus Uprising from the 3DS on current hardware like the Switch. Now, we don't know if that was just him kind of poking fun at Nintendo saying, I hope you guys do this one day, or if that was really his big hint that he knows it's happening and he's probably directly involved with it. And following the hiring post at Bandai Namco, that is entirely possible that this is one of the more likely 2024 games in terms of a classic franchise getting a port or remaster that we could see come back this year. I definitely think this one is probably the most likely, and it's one that I would love to see what they do with the control scheme as opposed to the touch controls on the 3DS. Not a bad experience by any means, but I would love to see that idea transition to a Pro controller and see what that feels like. You would have plenty of options for gyro aiming and things like that if that's what you wanted to do, but I really think that this is one of those games that does need to make its way over to modern hardware sooner or later. And then again, like we're saying with all of these games, it's the perfect way for Nintendo to test the waters with these franchises without having to spend a ton of money on them, and then you can see if there is a good audience response, you continue to create new games afterwards. Now, next up, we're going to talk about Donkey Kong briefly, and to some it seems like Donkey Kong hasn't been forgotten, but I promise you he has, because it has been since 2014 since we saw the release of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and it really sold pretty well. Of course, obviously on the Wii U, it wasn't going to do that well because of the install base, but by the time we saw it ported over to the Switch in 2018, and we really saw its first chance to sell successfully, it's over 5 million plus copies. It's obviously not Mario or Zelda numbers in the modern era, but it is a good showing for a 2D platformer, and many will hold Tropical Freeze as one of the best 2D platformers of all time, period. That crown still goes to Donkey Kong Country 2 for me personally. Maybe that's nostalgia talking, but I do think that Tropical Freeze is a top tier 2D platforming game, and whether or not we see Donkey Kong come back in that way with yet another 2D platformer, or if we see Nintendo take him into a 3D direction, that's fine too. Or if for some reason they need more time to develop the new direction for Donkey Kong, let's get a classic remastered collection of Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3. I think that would be excellent. There is that rights thing with Rare now being owned by Microsoft. I think they could come together though and obviously make that work. And could you imagine playing through Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 fully remastered, given the same treatment that we see as a game like Super Mario RPG, where that SNES visual style is just totally brought up to the current standards with full-on HD visuals, a remastered soundtrack, but give us the option to toggle to the old soundtrack. I would absolutely love to see that for the collection of country games 1 through 3. And even if it's not that, I just hope we see DK back on our Nintendo consoles sooner rather than later. Now, there's plenty of other franchises that I think Nintendo could potentially tap into this year. Maybe a Yoshi game. Maybe we see something in the Earthbound/Mother franchise one day. That would be awesome to see brought back, but you never can tell for sure with Nintendo, and that's really where I want to pose the question to you guys. What classic Nintendo franchises that you would consider to be forgotten do you hope we see brought back in 2024 or beyond? Are there any franchises on my list that you are also hoping we see return, and which ones that were not on my list do you most hope we see from Nintendo next? But regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before we leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch the video on screen next if you haven't already. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.